My family originated from Peguis, Manitoba, but they moved to Alberta probably in the 60s. And I was raised in Cree country, so for the first 20 years of my life, I just assumed that I was Cree and found out later that I was Ojibwe. Growing up in Edmonton, you know, there was a strong element of racism there, and it continues today. So for my teen years, I was mostly embarrassed and ashamed to admit to my heritage, if it was amongst anybody other than Indigenous people. But around 18 years of age, I started to gain more of a sense of pride in my background, and started to embrace it and, you know, speak about it in my music. From the moment that I started making music, and even as a youth, the music that I gravitated towards usually had a message behind it. So that kind of pushed me to want to create music that also shared a message. And I guess in a sense, I've always been someone who was a bully to the bullies, you know, always trying to protect the person that didn't have any defenses behind them. And I feel that through music, I'm able to create something that I believe, and I'm speaking for the voiceless. And in a lot of cases, the people that I identify with the most is people who share my background. You know, Native people, Indigenous people, who need a voice to be heard. And I found that from the beginning, when I would make music, I had the ability to write stuff that might have more of a catchier element that would make it more appealing to the masses. In the early years of me making music, a lot of my motivation came from trying to find an audience. And it took me a long time to realize that the audience were actually finding me. And that's how I've come in contact with my fan base, is that they find me. They're people that are looking for that type of message, and what I'm saying resonates with them. From 19 years of age on, my life was heavily influenced by drugs and alcohol. And once I made the choice to walk the path of sobriety, I found that a lot of my heroes were usually the people that were abstaining from drugs and alcohol. They were the ones that seemed the most clear-headed. They had their goals set out and just seemed to be able to define them, and they even speak better in a lot of cases. And I found that a lot of times, especially when I would do stuff like this, like interviews like this, I found myself kind of stumbling over my words. And sobriety kind of helped push me into a better position where I could actually share my thoughts and articulate them a lot better. Nowadays, we're starting to see more accurate information on Indigenous history being incorporated in the school systems. I'd love to see more of that. You know, when I was a kid, that didn't exist. I mean, I learned about the Métis when I was young, but you know, there's many nations just in Canada alone, and you have to break it down and kind of just explain what each of them are, because we're not all the same, but in a way we are. I think that we just need to have a lot more truths, a lot more information provided to youth, so that I think that would lead to us understanding each other a little bit better. And if you want to try to teach non-Indigenous youth about Indigenous culture, it's important to bring in people, bring in people who know it. Because I think a lot of times, sometimes assumptions are made, or even like it's easy to find misinformation. So we're misinforming people about the history or even why things are the way they are. And I think it's important to try to include people with some ancestry or who know their culture, know the history, to at least help kind of sort it out so that the misinformation is stopped. Embrace the world we live in and try to find our place in it. And I think that that's important. As far as success, whatever success means to you, I think that try to embrace what we have, embrace our tools, and see where they're applicable in life. I absolutely believe that everyone is born with a unique gift and purpose, whether it's arts or academics or sports. Especially in Indigenous culture, one thing I have noticed is a lot of Indigenous people seem to have some kind of artistic, creative type of talent. Whether it's drawing or music. Like even in my own children, I see like my daughter has this gift of dance. My son has this gift of music, like at 2 years old, could keep a beat, could keep a rhythm. And I mean, that's one of the most common characteristics I find in Indigenous people is our ability to create. Throughout my life, you know, the obstacles in my life are what made me stronger. So if you find that there's something holding you back in life, use it to your advantage and just push ahead, because anything is possible, you know?